So here's a weird little quickie for you. My recent playthrough of Echoes of Wisdom put top-down Zelda back on the brain, and I've been revisiting some old favorites and actually finally hitting the few stragglers I never got to, in particular the Game Boy Color trilogy, which is absolute fire, by the way. Do not sleep on these titles like I did. Among my revisits, however, was a little gem called Four Swords Adventures, which is basically the GameCube's long-forgotten middle child Zelda. Now, Four Swords Adventures is most well known for being a multiplayer-centric game, and while it certainly works in that department, I've actually always kind of preferred it in single-player. Please keep in mind, I'm not here today to discuss the game's general overall quality. This isn't a review per se, and I'm also not actually here to convince you that the single player is quote-unquote better, as the video's title indicates, but I do want to explore the elements of the single-player experience which I feel are often overlooked in the game's existing reviews, as well as when discussing it online. The single biggest thing I love about Four Swords Adventures in general, however, is its exploration of the Four Sword itself. The Four Sword is so goddamn underrated, and actually holds kind of a unique position within the series. Link's most well-known blade is, of course, the Master Sword, and while its design is iconic and it gets a lot of hype and exploration within the series lore, I've never found it especially interesting when compared with the Four Sword. Link has held other legendary blades from time to time as well, but anything that wasn't the Master Sword itself was a true one-off, only appearing within one title. The Phantom Sword, the Locomo Sword, the Razor and Gilded Swords, the Koholint and Noble Swords, you get the idea. The Kokiri Sword technically appeared twice, but as it was always used as the starting sword, I'm not counting it among the quote-unquote special or legendary ones. The Four Sword, by contrast, bears the unique distinction of having appeared more than once, 3 times to be exact, while still not being the Master Sword. But beyond that, it just has the coolest ability of any of Link's many swords, and Four Swords Adventures is the only game which ever put the full power of the sword in the hands of the player. But it only really does this in the single-player mode. So the reason I love the Four Swords so much is because of its canonical core ability. When it is drawn, it splits its wielder into 4 equally capable warriors. Unlike the Master Sword, which canonically has a few special passive properties, but in gameplay never acts as anything more than a simple power upgrade, the Four Sword essentially takes one swordsman and multiplies them into a united front. The implications of this in a medieval fantasy setting are so cool and unique. Just imagine if, like, Aragorn from The Lord of the Rings or Geralt of Rivia from The Witcher got their hands on the Four Sword. They're already basically one-man armies, and with the Four Sword in hand and 4 coordinated copies of themselves, they could be orders of magnitude more powerful and productive than they already are. This concept, this central conceit of the Four Sword, still has so much untapped potential, but to this day, the best exploration it ever got was in Four Swords Adventures, specifically because of the single-player mode. In-game, this concept manifests as 4 playable links, but with all of them under the control of one, they truly become the 4 who are one mentioned in the game's intro. The multiplayer is still fun, mind you, I'm not saying no, but it inevitably becomes more of a chaotic, semi-competitive party game, with the 4 links constantly griefing each other, rather than working together in a truly coordinated manner. It doesn't really feel like 4 Aragorns getting shit done, so much as 4 random dipshits just dicking around. But in single player, it really feels like you're playing out the second coming of the sword's legend. Speaking in terms of game mechanics, formations are the crux of this, of course, but they're a really cool, simple way to handle keeping the links coordinated and synchronized. Getting in and out of formations is snappy and instantaneous, provided you make use of the shortcut inputs. And while they do shine in the exploration and puzzle solving well enough, they really shine in the game's combat. Co-op combat is still a good time, of course, but I honestly have more fun taking down massive waves of guards and swarms of monsters by combining formations with both the sword itself and with Link's arsenal of traditional items and weapons. It just feels really good to take down a whole horde of baddies with 4 perfectly coordinated bows or bombs or fire rods. And even some of the game's lesser tasks, like searching for a hyper-specific digging spot on a large screen, become a relative cakewalk with 4 Links swinging their shovels in unison, like a well-oiled machine. All in all, I just think the Four-Sword is an insanely underrated part-time member of Link's arsenal, and I'd really, really love to see it return someday in full force. The original Four Swords only even allowed for multiplayer, and while its re-release added a single-player option, it still only gave the player 2 Links who couldn't really act in unison. The Minish Cap chronicled the forging of the Four-Sword, which was super rad, but for various logistical reasons, it never really put the sword's full, unleashed power in the hands of the player. Also, it really bothered me that the clones weren't red, blue, and purple like in the other 2 titles. The 4 elements infused into the sword in its forging even match the colors of the 4 Link's tunics, so like seriously, Nintendo, what the fuck? Anyway, that all just brings me back to why Four Swords Adventures is still the definitive Four-Sword experience, in my opinion, even if yes, the Minish Cap is obviously the better game. Still, if you ever want to experience a fresher and more interesting take on this legendary sword concept in a Zelda game, and you haven't tried it yet, then I say Four Swords Adventures is the way to go. It's not the best in the series by any means, but there's really nothing else quite like it, and it's still a ton of fun when taken on its own merits. And the best part is, if you take my advice, then you won't even need to worry about the multiplayer mode's ridiculously high barrier to entry, because honestly, I feel like the single-player mode accidentally became the better way to play anyway. So just get out there and experience the thrill of becoming the 4 who are 1. You can thank me later. And if you made it all the way to the end here, then thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, then please remember to do the algorithm things. I also have some other Zelda videos, so if you happen to be new here, be sure to check those out as well. I even have them organized into a playlist for your convenience. Alright, that's it for today. Peace out.